Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Cory. I'm your host, Cory Smith. I am here with national college basketball writer for CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports, Isaac Trotter. Isaac, first of all, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well. I didn't get the coffee memo. I should have really prepped for this a little bit more. I can't wait on mine. So my glass is here and it's already empty.
That's perfectly fine. There's literally been times where I've just had this completely empty and just sat here and done it. Nobody will ever know. You can't see inside the mug anyway. So I do that intentionally because I think people would also judge the way that I drink coffee, and it's a little more cream than people probably would want. But anyways, Um, all right, so I wanted to obviously have you on to talk college basketball. NC State, a much bigger offseason story this year than most years. I know obviously last year, it was big because you're coming off of a Final Four and it's kind of figuring out what this team is going to do. This year, major regime change. Will Wade coming in over from McNeese State. Obviously, multiple stops prior to that with VCU and LSU, but now comes into NC State with a major overhaul. This roster is completely new. But just, your thoughts on the Will Wade hype and whether it's deserved or not for NC State.
First off, I just think going back and like that decision by the NC State brass to be like, listen, like Kevin Keatts made the Final Four, that's great, but this isn't good enough. Like we have to be different, and to go make the hire like that was really, really interesting to me and impressive. I think it's a sign that NC State wants to be really serious in basketball every year, not just once every couple of years, right? Like, and so you go in and you hire somebody like Will Wade, who is a proven winner, who has proven to be a talent maximizer, who has proven to be a talent acquisitor, right? Whatever that word is. Like he is constantly able to get dudes. And so you bring him into NC State and it completely changes the perception, I think, of the ACC, because for the last few years, it's been like Duke alone. And then you had the year where Carolina was a little bit good, and then maybe the Miami pops up or Clemson's been solid. But like the ACC needs to be better in basketball. And I think a hire like this changes some of the depth of the league, because Will Wade's coming in here being like, I'm not trying to like just make the tournament. I'm trying to win the league. And I think that's something. Like I went back and was watching his initial press conference, and he's like, we're going to win right away. Like that type of swagger is something that I think really resonates with NC State basketball. I think it's something NC State basketball needs. And I think with the roster like this, it wasn't just lip service either.
Yeah, well, that kind of brings me to the roster overhaul. Where do you feel like this team deserves to be ranked? Because I've seen some put them inside the top 20, some like barely inside the top 25, some saying like, "Hey, I want to see what this roster actually looks like, how it comes together before I'll put them inside my top 25." But where do you feel like this team kind of deserves to be, not only in the national discussion, but also the ACC as a whole too?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think some people are a little bit traumatized of like picking first year coaches to win at a high level, because like we've seen it in the past in the last couple of years. But for the most part, there's not this huge sample size of first year coaches coming into high major ranks and winning at a high level. Like Jerome Tang, what he did with Kansas State a couple of years ago was the outlier, not the rule. But I think when you kind of look at this roster, you see the veterans that they've accumulated on it. You see the pieces that they've added to it. I have to put my money where my mouth is. My preseason top 25 will come out on Monday or Tuesday. That kicks off the first official practices. I think NC State is a top 25 team nationally, and I think they're right there in the mix to be in the top 4 or 5 in the ACC. For me, I have them 4th in the ACC right now, but I think that they're firmly in the mix there to be a top 4 seed in the ACC tournament. That's a really good first year outcome, I would think. Like, I think you'd absolutely take that if you're a top 25 team. Now, all right, now why are we doing this? Why do we think that Will Wade could exceed that hype? I think a veteran team really matters, and I think this team's going to guard, like really guard. And I think that's one thing that, like, when I was looking at this roster, like you can focus on the lack of rim protection inside, or they don't have that elite level rim protector that's proven with great measurables, right? If they're starting Van Allen Lubin at the 5, but they have terrific positional size on the wing, and they have point of attack defenders that I'm really bullish on, especially with Trey Holloman. And that gives you an opportunity to have a very, very high floor defensively. And if you knew anything about Will Wade, even dating back to his days at LSU, he was really, really like his pick and roll coverages defensively are really advanced. He was really one of the first person that did like triple switching on pick and rolls and really weaponized that. So I think that this type of roster can execute some of his defensive coverages that he wants to bring in. And if NC State is a top 3 or 4 defense in the ACC and a top 25 unit defensively this year, I think they have enough paths to finding ways to score consistently, headlined by Darian Williams, to be a top 25 team in the country.
Yeah, and if we've seen anything, by looking at last year in particular, if we've learned anything from what Will Wade and Brandon Chambers, who's kind of the defensive specialist for this team as well, that they're willing to switch things, on the fly. And you look back at the Clemson game from last year, that's a team that they'll be facing this year, and I'm sure, I'm sure Brad Brunell is going, please God, don't throw that at me again. I don't want to have to score 13 points in the first half again. So, but you're going back to the offensive side of the basketball. You mentioned Darian Williams. Obviously, that's the biggest piece for NC State. The second to last piece, I think people forget that Van Allen Lubin actually came after him on this roster, and then a couple others, late in the summer that they were able to add to. But Darian Williams, you labeled him as the best wing handler in college basketball, and how just how does he impact the NC State roster, and what do you categorize as a wing handler in that, I guess, in this system too?
Yeah, a wing handler for me is like, he has the size, right? He's about 6'6", but like the ability to post up and initiate ball screens, like those type of ways of, hey, we can run offense through you in multiple different ways. That's why I put him in the wing handler bucket. He is going to be the fulcrum of this team. And I think the best aspect of Darian Williams is he makes life easier for everybody else. Like he is somebody that you can throw to on the mid post and he can score for himself. But the moment you double him, he's a willing passer, and he's not passing to like get an assist. You know what I mean? Like some of those guards that like they're only passing when they get an assist. No, it's like Darian Williams creates advantages. Hey, I have two guys come to me, I know somebody's open, I'll get a hockey assist on this play. I'll find the open advantage and constantly get my team a good shot, even if I don't necessarily get a stat for that. And I think that's part of Darian Williams' game that I really respect. And, he's also really, really tough. Like he consistently last year played through some horrific ankle injuries. Like his ankles looked like, spaghetti and meatballs, like they were bad. And he was consistently taping them up and constantly going out there to play at a high level. And the ability for NC State to have somebody that walks on the floor knowing like, hey, we can mismatch hunt with him. I think that they're going to use inverted screens at a high level, right? Like they can use their guards screening for Darian Williams to find a mismatch. Because if you get a small on Darian Williams, like it's over. Like he's 6'6". I think he's probably like 235 ish. Like he can put dudes under the basket, and that's something that I think will really help the team. And plus, like his ability to play off the ball as well. Like he's not a ball dominant player. Like I said, he moves the basketball. He fits into with a lot of teams, and he can play off the ball as well because he can shoot at a high level. So, I think every good team, like he fits in because like he does so many different things well, playing with the ball, playing without the ball. And I think Will Wade's gonna have a lot of fun, like kind of using him in different ways. But there's no doubt, like you paid him to be the number one premier alpha option. He was not that at Texas Tech. He was not that at Nevada. So this will be a transition for him stepping into that, lead dog type of role. And I'm curious to see how he handles it. I think he'll ace it. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the ACC this season.
Yeah, he was kind of in that role at Nevada before he went to Texas Tech. And obviously, as you mentioned, there are so many different ways that you can utilize him. And not only did you break it down in terms of offensive players this summer, which if you haven't checked it out, do go make sure you search Isaac Trotter, CBS Sports. There's a full breakdown. Also, several NC State mentions in the 101 things to know going into the season too. But one of your most recent stories was taking a look at the defensive side of the basketball, and you listed three different NC State players in there. Trey Holloman as a top 10 point of attack defender, Terrence Arsenault as a top 10 wing stopper, and then Kadir Copeland as a jumbo utility guard. You mentioned the defense for NC State. How do you think all of these guys kind of fit in to that system, and how much do you feel like they still help on both sides of the court and not just the defensive side of the basketball too?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun group defensively because I think Will Wade is still going to try to be a turnover forcing defense. Like I think that's what he wants to do. He wants to turn defense into offense. And I think Arsenault, Copeland, and Holloman, especially, those three guys feel like the head of the snake defensively. I'd throw Williams in there too. I think he's a better defender than what he's shown on tape last year. Part of that was just the ankle injuries. I didn't think he moved as well as he could have, but he's a good team defender. But Holloman, we'll go one by one with them. I think with him, like Holloman wise, like offensively, He'll give you some 3-point shooting. He's very clutch. He can hit pull-up jumpers. Not a ton of rim pressure, but he can kind of score from 2 levels. But defensively, he is a pest, like a total pest.
Mm-hmm.
He will pick you up from 94 feet if you ask him to. He'll pick you up right at half court if you ask him to. And he's just draped on dudes. And at Michigan State last year, like their point of attack defense was as good as anybody's in college basketball. Holloman was a huge part of that. Arsenault, just ludicrous length and athleticism. Like just it's 6'6", insane wingspan. The way he moves is different. Houston's defense was one of the best units in college basketball last year. And when he subbed into the game, it got even better. Like there were, I think, 12 or 13 points per 100 possessions better defensively when Arsenault was on the floor. And the guys that Kelvin Sampson was having him guard, like, were the top guy on the scouting report, like every night. It's like, hey, when you play Duke, it's going to be him. When you play Arizona, hey, you're going to go chase around Caleb Love. When you go play Baylor, VJ Edgecombe, who's a lottery pick, that's your assignment. So stuff like that, I think, is going to really be, I think he's probably the best pound per pound defender on this roster. I think he's the guy that NC State, hey, when they go play Duke, like, he's going to be the one that takes the top guy on the scouting report. Maybe not Cam Boozer, because like he's a little bit bigger, but like that wouldn't stun me either. Like Arsenault can guard fours. Like he even did that last year. Then Copeland, just big, strong, physical, nasty, forces turnovers. Like he's a really, really good team defender. And again, like understanding what Will Wade wants to do, because he has that background at McNeese, I think gives him a little bit of a leg up. So it's not necessarily a full new team, because you do still have a couple of those holdovers that can kind of understand what they need to do and help other guys in practice pick it up. So those 3 guys, I'm really bullish on them defensively. And I think I'm curious to see how much they'll all play together, right? Like some of them need to step up offensively for them to all play together. Like we haven't seen Arsenault in a huge offensive role. Like Kadir Copeland isn't much of a shooter. Holloman needs to be more efficient, right? He only shot 37% from the field last year. It's like he have to be a little bit more efficient. So we'll see how often all 3 of those guys get to play together, so they can be, total hounds defensively all together. But if you have 2 of those guys on the floor at all times, I think you feel good, like walking in every night being like, hey, like whoever that top guard is on the opposing scouting report and that top wing scorer, like we got dudes to throw at them.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add in there too, and I don't think a lot of people have noticed it yet. And, maybe it will shine once they actually get into the season, but another defender for this team, Musa Sanya, that's coming over from the international ranks. He'll be somebody to definitely watch. He's a big, doesn't have, the extreme size that you need to play the center position. But going against fours, he's got a crazy wingspan. I can't remember exactly what it is right now. I want to say it's like 7'3", 7'4" type wingspan to be able to, add on to that as well, along with, as you're mentioning, all those guys are very switchable. Trey Holloman, probably, 1 or 2 guard, whichever one he wants to go against on a consistent basis. But then, Kadir Copeland and Terrence Arsenault, guys that can play against 3s and 4s too. You have to figure out, who you want to be that rim defender. And I think Musa Sanya has a chance to be one of those guys along with Vanilla Lubin if he can step up the season defensively too.
No, it's a good point. I think the other thing too is I went back and looked at some of his Will Wade's best teams at LSU. He did have a top 10 defense. He built a top 10 defense. Now it really helped when you had some NBA type of caliber athletes on that group. So like that matters as well. But one aspect about it is he was very good at allowing, a few amount of shots at the rim. And that's one thing I think could be a strength of this team. Maybe they're not a great rim protecting team, but they're a good rim deterrent team where you're not getting many of those shots because they're swarming the paint. They're very switchable. You're not getting a lot of those straight line drives. You're not able to collapse the defense. And when you do, like, you're kind of being met with hounds of defenders at that second level before you can get all the way to the rim. So I think NC State's rim protection is probably not going to be elite this year, but I think they're going to be a good rim deterrent defense. And, if you're holding teams like if teams are only taking 28% of their shots at the rim against you, that's a win for a defense. And that's where LSU's defenses were early in the Will Wade tenure. And I think he'll go back to that again at NC State.
Yeah, it's funny because not to go back too far here, but like I remember Kevin Keats talking about this like 3 or 4 years ago about the fact that the guards were just turnstiles. They were just allowing opposing guards to go through and asking guys, this is several years ago, but asking guys like DJ Funderburk or Manny Bates to have to guard those positions. And that can be frustrating for those guys too. So,
and if you watch North Carolina film last year, Van Allen Lubin's like playing on the back line, and Elliot Cadeau is playing Olay defense at the point of attack and being like, just like some of Elliot Cadeau's defense was not the best. There are some possessions there that were not great. So yeah, I agree. I think maybe you could see a different and better version defensively of Van Allen Lubin with guards like this who can really heat up the basketball.
Exactly. All right. So as far as the ACC is concerned, you mentioned UNC. Obviously they went through a roster overhaul as well, a $14 million roster overhaul, as we were told. And just obviously Duke and Louisville are two of the other top teams in this discussion, and several others that have kind of been pushing towards that. I mean, I've been hearing some people talk about Syracuse, obviously Notre Dame, and the experience that they bring back too. Just your thoughts on the ACC pecking order and what you foresee for the ACC this season, because obviously it is a season where they need major change. They need to be able to, have, just more than 4 or 5 teams making it to the NCAA tournament would be great, right?
Totally. I think the ACC is better because of the coaching hires. I think very clearly NC State has improved their roster in a real way where I think they're going to be in the NCAA tournament and in that conversation all year long. I think Virginia is a team that I would keep a really close eye on as well. Ryan Odom has done a terrific job. They've recruited international very well. They've added some excellent veteran guards. Malik Thomas, a transfer out of San Francisco. Get ready to know that name. I think he could average 17 to 19 points a game in the ACC. He's going to be a big-time player. Thijs de Ridder is the other one from Belgium. He's 22 years old from international waters, and he can hoop. So I think Virginia is going to be a much, much improved team. But I kind of like separating it into tiers. Like tier 1 for me in the ACC, I think is Duke and Louisville. Both those two teams, I think, are national championship. Like they're going to walk in this year being like, we think we can win the title. And both that really stems from both of them have lottery picks. Both of them have very deep rosters, and they have a ton of talent. That tier 2 for me, I think, is UNC, NC State, and Virginia. I think those are the 3 teams that I think could be, top 25-ish teams. I think they're NCAA tournament caliber teams with the right breaks. They could maybe get up into tier 1. And then you're right. Then it kind of opens up. Like I'm kind of buying what SMU is selling a little bit. I think that they have a decent amount of retention. Jaron Pierre, the transfer addition out of Jacksonville State, is a big-time player. I think that they'll help them a little bit. Miami is a curious team. They had one of the gifts from the scheduling gods in the ACC. They don't have to play Duke this year, like in the ACC play. Like it's absolutely wild that Jay Lucas does not have to play his old team this year in ACC play. So I think Miami is going to rack up a ton of wins. I don't know how good they're going to be. I think they're going to win a lot of games, if that makes sense. But it's a very good defensive group. Shelton Henderson is going to be a good wing defender for them. He was nearly a 5-star for us in the class of 2025. But Ernest Uday out of TCU is a big-time defender as well. And then True Washington out of New Mexico is one of my favorite defenders. So I think Miami will be a decent team. I think Clemson, I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back, but they're going to still be in the mix. Syracuse, I think now is their time to take a step. Notre Dame, like if they can stay healthy, like Marcus Burton can really go. Like if the other guys can step up, maybe they could theoretically get in that mix. But yeah, for me, I feel like there's 5 teams that I really, really like in the ACC, and it's Duke, Louisville, UNC, NC State, and Virginia. And after that, it's kind of like an open waters for who's going to really rise up and take that number 6 spot and compete for an NCAA tournament bid.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned Malik Thomas. That was actually a guy that NC State really liked early on, but they ended up getting Trey Holloman, and they were kind of going, I don't know if we're willing to wait out this process. And then, said, hey, at shooting guard, we really like what Paul McNeil brings back, and also, as a potential guy, but then also, adding a Matt Abel, which is a young player to this team, and then, a couple other guards they feel like can fit that role too. So that'll definitely be an interesting one to watch.
I'm so glad you brought up McNeil and Abel, because I do think those two guys are turning out to be like maybe the biggest X factors for this team, because I think that scoring punch, both of those two dudes are just wired to score. And that's one thing I'm curious about with this team is like, how good can this offense be? And I don't think it can be like elite unless Abel is that dude. And I'm talking about him being like a potential 1st-round pick, as a guy that like NBA scouts are coming to watch him play as much as possible, because he can really go 6'5", great athletic size, can really shoot it from deep. And then McNeil, like it's curious to see like who they decided to keep from the previous regime, and the fact that they chose McNeil and wanted to keep him in the mix here, I think is a big sign of what they think of his ceiling could be. So if one of those guys can pop, or even 2 of those guys can really just prove like, hey, we can make right decisions offensively, we can make their good decisions defensively, you're not going to hurt the teeth of our defense because if we're on the floor, and those 2 dudes pop, I think you could talk about NC State finishing, that's like the path for them to finish as a tier 1 team in the ACC, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, with McNeil, the interesting aspect of that was asking Will Wade this offseason. He said he was the guy that rated the highest out of any player on the roster last year. And of course, he didn't end up getting actual minutes until the very end of the season this past year, which was the curious part. But everything we've heard, the buy-in from him, obviously the buy-in from Matt Abel early on, and then the summer that Matt Abel had, like everywhere he showed up, it was just like, yeah, he was the best player on the court. Yeah, he's the best player on the court. Like, especially in guard settings, like that's really impressive. Last question I have for you before I let you out of here. We talked about Will Wade earlier. We talked about where the ACC is right now. How quickly do you feel like Will Wade has a chance to make this team, a consistent contender, not only in the ACC, but nationally? I mean, already being, discussed inside the top 25, but as you mentioned, this team doesn't, this program doesn't want to be there. All right, every other year, you're a top 25 team and you get to the NCAA tournament. No, you want to be in the NCAA tournament consistently and then pushing for, top 20, top 15, if not top 10 type rankings.
No, and that's a good question. It's nuanced too, because I think right now a lot of coaching staffs are like, well, how much money am I going to have? Like, so I'm curious to see like what NC State's level of financial buy-in is going to be with Will Wade. Like when you first get a new coach, it's really easy to see like that money influx right away. But like, does that sustain year after year? I have no doubt that with like whatever type of money he has, whether that's 4 million, 8 million, 12 million, whatever that number ends up looking like, he's going to put together a roster that makes sense for the money that he had. But like, does NC State really like force that his hand? It's like, hey, we're going to take our NIL or whatever percentage of the pot that we're thinking for football versus basketball, and we're going to try to give you as much as we possibly can for basketball. I think that could really be the difference maker between whether this team is a good team that's consistently in the NCAA tournament every year, because that's kind of what Will Wade has. Like he's built teams that just constantly put themselves in the mix to make the NCAA tournament, or if we're a great team, if we're a great program where it's like, hey, like it's Duke, it's Carolina, and it's us every single year in the pecking order in the ACC. And I think a lot of coaches are kind of in that mix of like, all right, how much money am I actually going to have? Like, what can I actually do in this resources game? Because I think everybody right now is kind of playing chicken of like, oh, we might have 12 million, we might have 3 million. Like, we just aren't really sure exactly what we're going to have as the rules consistently change. It'd be really ideal if the NCAA could come down with some real like actual laws on this thing and figure this out. So it's a little bit more of an even playing field for everybody.
Yeah, I'm wondering, if things kind of regress to the mean this upcoming year because of the fact that, so many teams, front loaded going and saying, all right, we're going to try to get as much as we possibly can this offseason because we don't know what it's going to look like next year when the rev sharing starts. To now, teams are going, all right, how do we prepare for this upcoming roster? How do we prepare to go out there and recruit? And you're seeing a lot of kids kind of slow playing their recruitments right now too, going, all right, I want to find out what the money is going to actually look like before I take, what seems like the highest offer right now. And then teams suddenly find out, okay, we can start digging into NIL for these purposes, and they start offering more money later too. So
it's crazy. I like some of the stories that you're here right now on the trailer. If I was a high school kid, there's no reason to commit right now. Yeah. Absolutely none. Like you got to wait to the spring. And I think that's where like buying power opportunities in the spring are going to be fascinating, both in the portal. I think a lot of coaches are just flocking over to international waters and just taking whoever they can, like an agent that says like, oh, this kid can really play. Like you're on the team. We'll add him without even really watching him. I think the teams and the coaches and the programs that actually have the right intel overseas can get the right international talent and then also know where to go where other coaches aren't. Like I think at some point, high school recruiting is going to go back to being undervalued because international was undervalued for a little while. Now everyone's over there. Like the portal was never undervalued. Everybody wants the kids out of the portal now. But like, when will high school recruiting then become, that place where you can find some hidden gems? If that becomes a spot for NC State where they're able to finally like kind of tread that water or tread that line the right way and find where the value is, I think you're talking about a team that can be near the top of the ACC perennially year after year.
Yeah, and that's where a guy like Andrew Slater is so important in that sense because he's done it from the NBA level. He's done it from, the scouting level as well, trying to work his way up to the NBA. So being able to see international players and knowing, what he's looking for in high school players too helps in a significant way. So Isaac, I appreciate you jumping on. If people can't see already, you can see where to follow you on Twitter there or X, whatever you want to call it. Anywhere else that people can go to look for your content too?
Yeah, 247sports.com or cbssports.com. That's where all my stuff will be. But yeah, season next week, first practice. Season will be here before you know it. So a lot of preview content in the works, and I'm excited. I can't wait. It's 6 weeks away, honestly. Like, it's like going to be Christmas Day for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hopefully we see some of your stuff on the Pack Pride site soon, because I know it's a little crazy right now. I know you're going through and going all the scheme questions for a lot of different teams. So hopefully we'll see some of your stuff up on our site soon. Isaac, I appreciate you jumping on, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.